very relevant session entitled Running a Successful E-Commerce Business in the Current Environment. We're thrilled to have Keith Willey here from London Business School. He's professor of many different things. I'll probably get 2 out of 3 right, but strategic and international management and entrepreneurship. Just recently in January, Financial Times listed London Business School as the top-ranked business school in the world. So all the snide remarks about Harvard earlier to Keith, he can just point to January with the Financial Times. Keith is going to introduce the panelists, and they're just going to get on with it.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, we've got 1 hour to get these guys to tell us as much as possible about what they're up to, plus for you to give us some questions for them to answer. So I'm thinking that maybe halfway, I'll get them talking to halfway, and then after halfway, you can wade in. So you can be thinking about your killer questions now, you know, the trick questions, get them ready. They're going to introduce themselves in a second. You've heard my introduction. I'd say I've got one other qualification for being here. I live in postcode SW13, which recently became famous for having the highest internet spend per head for internet retail. So obviously, I'm thinking of cutting off my broadband connection soon. Guys, why don't you lead off? Daniel, starting with you.
All right. My name is Daniel Kersner, and I work with Starwood Hotels based here in London, looking after the marketing for Northwest Europe. For those of you who aren't familiar with Starwood, we're one of the largest leisure and hospitality companies in the world. About 200,000 employees, 1,000 hotels globally. Some of the brands that you might be more familiar with are Sheraton, Westin, Le Méridien, W Hotels, and Luxury Collection.
Great. And what's your challenge at the moment? What's your biggest challenge on e-commerce?
I think one of the interesting things for us is the shift in control. It used to be that if you were booking a hotel room, you would go to a travel agent. We would hopefully send brochures out to that travel agent who would then pass those on to you, and we would control that flow of information. Of course, then the internet came along, and we took those brochures and we put them online, and those were our initial websites. Then we enhanced our websites, but at the same time, the user-generated content and the social networks began to take over. And now there's actually more information on our own hotels on other sites than there is on our own sites. So I think accepting that loss of control and also understanding how we work with all of those social networks that are out there, how we work with the user-generated content, the TripAdvisors that are out there, and how we use that to our advantage, recognizing that we have lost that control with the customer.
Okay, I'm sure that's the theme we're going to get into, folks. Angus.
Yeah, my name's Angus Cormie. I work with Dell in Europe. I run the online business in the consumer online business in Europe. We're a European business. We operate in 14 different countries with about 11, 12 different languages. And it's a very centralized operation. Everything we tend to do is based on one model fits all, or has been in the past, and I'm happy to talk about how that's changing. Challenges we've got in Dell at the moment, I think we're in certainly what I'm seeing at the moment is we're finding ourselves in a real strange situation that from a management team. We're a transactionally based business. Dell is probably very well known for being a numbers-driven business, a transaction-orientated business. And the one challenge that we're being faced with at the moment in difficult economic times, or however you want to frame it, is focus on the basics. Stop going over there looking at the shiny stuff, but focus on the basics. At the same time, they want innovation. And we're in an environment that's ripe for innovation. So we're trying to do both at the same time and try and find that balance. But of course, the innovation therefore comes in the basic stuff, what we do on a day-to-day basis of driving demand, driving better conversion on the website, and so on. But it's about doing that in a clever way, in a way that stands out. And there's loads of different things that we're doing as Dell. And then the other challenge is retail, and I'm sure that I'll be talking about that later as well.
Okay, so we'll get some specific examples from you later, Angus. Simon.
Hello, Simon Curry. I'm the CEO of Dabs.com PLC. It's one of the UK's largest e-tailers of technology product. A large chunk of our business is just reselling technology hardware from laptops, TVs, to both businesses and consumers. Biggest challenge at the moment, making money in consumer, identifying those segments in the consumer market which can represent profitable revenue growth for us. Those opportunities are getting increasingly hard. You need to spot them quickly and then act with vigor to monetize them. That's probably my biggest single challenge. It's probably a challenge shared by everybody here. Other than that, I'm introducing a brand new ERP system throughout the whole company, which is never easy, particularly in a recession. I'll tell you more about that later.
Fantastic. Simon actually used the word brutal, I think, 10 times in the green room, so we're going to find out a little bit more about the trends and so on. Mark?
Hello, I'm Mark Inskip. First surprise, I suppose, might be for you guys that I'm from Accenture and I don't have any PowerPoint with me. So apologies for that. The second surprise might be that actually Accenture has something to contribute to this debate. I run a practice that actually is not technology focused. I'm an online marketeer for the last 10 years and worked in a number of industries, and I run a practice that's focused on helping organisations improve revenue, improve performance, and just make better web. And by making better web, I think my biggest challenge is overcoming the hippo principle that we see everywhere, hippo being the highest paid person's opinion, which is generally something that we fight against a lot in organisations to try and make them more fact-based and data-orientated in driving online performance.
Fantastic. So we've got a great panel of experts here who are spending millions on their internet businesses. So maybe we can kind of deal with this thing about difficult times. I mean, let's just get this out on the table. I mean, how difficult is difficult right now? Who'd like to handle that one?
I'll start. Well, difficult is it's very tough, extremely tough. Within the consumer electronics market, you're talking about with Dell, you're talking about high-value items, and people are being very discerning about what they're spending and where they're spending at the moment. And we're seeing some very specific behavioural changes in the way that customers are buying online at the moment. They're shopping around a lot more. They're spending longer in that buying cycle. They're trying different places to get new information or different information than just the manufacturer sites. That's a trend that's increasing with speed rather than necessarily. We've seen the trend. It's just ramping up.
Where are they getting that information from the social networks?
Yeah, from anywhere they can find it, and Google helps with that. And it's basically they're just doing a lot of research online. They're doing a lot of research with friends and family. They're looking at what other people are buying and getting those recommendations. And they're looking at the manufacturer sites, and they're demanding of manufacturing sites great comparison and great clarity so they can make those decisions better.
Right.
Yeah.
Simon, brutal was the word.
Brutal is the word, yeah, certainly is. It's getting more brutal. I'd say the last quarter has been the most brutal that I've seen, and despite my appearance, I've been working 21 years. So it has got really, 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 really hard. To do well now, absolutely, you need to have the right operating model. Gross margins in my business are 10% going to 9%. So to succeed in that type of market where gross margins are 9 or 10%, net margin or EBITDA is between 2 and 3%, you need to have an operating expenditure in the 7% now with a plan to get it to the 6%. I mean, the truisms still exist now as they always did, but are probably more relevant. If you're in the B2C market, as I am in terms of electronics, we either need to be promoting a part to scale or doing something distinctly different from the competition. And I'd say now the market competition is ferocious, and we need to identify what those things are when you do them differently. And rest assured, that point of difference only lasts for about a month, a week, a day.
Simon, I think you were doing some interesting things around this 9 or 10% gross margin, because there's actually a lot of variation across the portfolio of products. I mean, tell us a little bit about what you're playing.
All right. Well, one thing, I was sent the list of example questions. One of the things is, what's actually working well in your business at the moment? I thought, right, hang on. One thing that is working well is that is price optimization. I run a series of store groups. I run dabs.com, I run BT Shop, I run BT Business Direct. All of those are separate store groups with separate markets, separate customer segments, separate service models. I used to serve them all with one pricing file. What I've done now is I've implemented price optimization software, which allows me to optimize prices per that store group. So it allows me to make a little bit of gain in terms of gross margin. It's a very intelligent piece of software. It's sort of self-learning software. One of my colleagues said to me the other day, it reminded him of the early Terminator movie, at some point the software is going to become self-aware and decide it doesn't need any humans anymore. And maybe that's over tomorrow.
What is it that's underlying? Why are you able to get price differentials across? Is it customer segmentation?
It's customer insight and segmentation. If you take BT Shop for a example, prime product would be telephony product.
Yeah.
Prime market for that product would be a greying market. Less price sensitive, probably need more help in terms of self-serve. They'll require a phone line. They're less internet savvy. You can demand a higher price for that market, and that market's willing to pay it, than say Dabs.com, where I'm dealing with largely a young to middle-aged male living in the southeast. Reading's our most popular postcode, who are technology enthusiasts and are much, much more price aware.
Right, and they've scraped all the sites and...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, really interesting lessons from marketing, really, turn into e-commerce.
Indeed, yeah.
Now, Daniel, the hotels, you know, they know all about the tricks, you know, 11 o'clock at night, $10 for a hotel room, so they've understood differential pricing according to time of day and so on. How is this now manifest online for you? I mean, how are you doing this?
Well, I think I'm happy to say that Starwood isn't necessarily selling our hotels for $10 at 11 o'clock at night. But for us, certainly, we have had a very strong focus on revenue management for the last few years and understanding how to maximize that area of our business. I think what's changed in the last few years is when I started with Starwood about 6 years ago, marketers were taking the lead from the revenue managers. And fortunately, there are no revenue managers from Starwood in the room today, so I can say that that trend is now shifting. And I think marketing is now controlling a little bit more of that. The main reason is that we're able to really understand what it is that our guests are looking for. So where revenue managers were looking at history and trends, being able to put rates in market, I'm not sure how valid history and trends are right now, where we can look in real time at what our guests are looking for, where they want to stay, what they're prepared to pay, what our competitors are charging. And I think that's really changed. And so the relationship that marketing has with revenue management is certainly a lot stronger than it's ever been before. And really being able to use the tools that we as marketers have available to us to understand what it is that our customers are looking for and what they are prepared to pay for a room.
Right. Well, it sounds to me like some kind of maturing of people's approach, and you know, rather than we're over the internet rush and now we have to think a bit more carefully. So Mark, I mean, are you seeing a change in what your clients are looking for? Are they?
Yes and no. I mean, it's really interesting to hear. You know, the guys are talking about the same principles that have been around for years: effective revenue management, managing costs and operating models effectively, segmenting our customer base and delivering them propositions. Now, you know, there's a couple of changes out there that consumers generally are becoming better informed, different by segment, different by country, but more informed about the purchase decisions that they're making. And frankly, the organisations that we're seeing thrive in this downturn, because some are those that are the best at delivering revenue, segmentation, operating model efficiency, and those that are not the best at that are really struggling. And so, depending on the clients that we're talking to, you know, frankly, there are some that we're learning from in some of that stuff that are really excelling, and then many others we're helping to try and address some of those core issues. It isn't about you know, one of the things. There's no soapbox, fortunately, on here for me to stand on, but you know, one of the things we get you know, kind of angry about in the marketplace is frankly, forgive me, there's a lot of bullshit floating around and online. Yeah, there's some new language and there's some new things, but it doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And all of that experience that we've all learned in business over the last 10, 20, 30, you know, years is all wrong. You know, there are some fresh challenges in the online space, but actually running a sound good business is still about running a sound good business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something else that came up earlier in the green room, guys, was social media. So is anybody here tweeting this conference? Hey, well, you're doing it without
not now.
I was at the conference the other day and it was like half the room put their hands up. I was at one at the business school and nobody put their hands up, which was a bit of an indictment. But so social media, are you seeing some impact, Daniel, broadly?
Certainly, and I think, I mean, you asked the question about tweeting, and I think probably half the people who are actually tweeting in this room admitted it and raised their hands. And you know, maybe I'll just ask a quick question: how many people in this room have gone to TripAdvisor to read about a hotel room or to write a review about a hotel room?
Wow.
So I think that's the short answer to your question.
Yeah. Hang on, how many people here from TripAdvisor? Yeah, the ones with the big smiles. Okay.
So I mean, that is the short answer to the question. I think that the hands in the air speak for itself.
Yeah.
We are definitely seeing a shift happen, not just to TripAdvisor, but also to Twitter is a good example. You know, somebody who posts a review to TripAdvisor, it may take a few days for that review to be posted online, and then we monitor all of our reviews. We reply to every single review that gets posted on TripAdvisor. But right now, for instance, Twitter is an important vehicle for us, because a guest who checks into a hotel who has an interaction at the front desk will often tweet in the elevator on their way to the room, and that review or that comment, that tweet is actually posted online while that guest is still in the hotel. There's two things. One is the impact that has on other guests, and the second is our ability to be able to use that to interact with the guests and to be able to better their experience.
Are you able to feed that back to the hotel? The guy behind the desk or the guy behind the desk?
We are. I mean, we're starting to do that now, and I said to my boss a couple weeks ago that I envision in a few years that we'll have people sitting in offices with RSS feeds coming up on big monitors in front of them like stockbrokers, and I genuinely believe that. If somebody tweets in one of our hotels, we will monitor those tweets through RSS feeds. We'll take the tweet, we'll often respond, and then we'll feed it off to the respective department in the hotel. So if that guest is sitting in the restaurant and has had an interaction, whether it's a good interaction or a bad one in the restaurant, within seconds after that person has actually tweeted, we're able to take action and interact with that guest. Keeping in mind, of course, that somebody who is going online and tweeting is doing so because they want to have those interactions. And they've been very favorable in terms of their response back to us, as long as we are actually genuine with that customer and we do respond to them. So
I'm picturing some fantastic plot lines for Hotel Babylon at this point, actually. Those of you who watch that. Dell outlet in the US, $3 million
on Twitter. Yeah, so it's very much a mechanism for communicating offers to our customers, people who sign up, and it's something that we're building into our plans for Europe, and we've launched Twitter services in Europe. Let's be very clear though, Twitter is not going to solve any P&L issues, okay? What Twitter is a part of a package of thinking and a cultural change within any business, which is thinking about how do I re-engage with customers in new ways. And you know, Dell has been very prolific over the last few years in building a very strong social media interaction and with social media tools and customer, voice of customer kind of engagement. And we're very strong into ratings and reviews, into blogs and forums and so on. I think what we've got to do is make sure that as we build that activity, and it's very strong in the US and not so strong in Europe, we have to roll it more into Europe, is to make sure we actually leverage that in our marketing activity as well, which is what we're not doing today very well.
Any thoughts on particular ones? Is it Facebook or YouTube or something else?
I think I think all of the above. I don't think it should be restricted. I don't think there's any single winning kind of winning formula or winning recipe which says you've got to do this, this, and this. And you look at some big TV brand campaigns. We heard about it this morning as well. We saw some awesome examples about just extending what we were doing in terms of the campaign. I think more for the examples we saw this morning was actually they used that mechanism to build the brand. I think we're coming at it, and some brand companies are coming at it from the perspective of we have a brand, how do we then re-engage with that social media to actually bring other dimensions to that? And we're on the cusp of doing that as well, and many other brand companies are in the same place, I think.
Right. I mean, Simon, I do go to dabs.com often to go into the forums to find out why my modem doesn't work or something. So, and with it being sort of technical products, you're getting a lot of people wanting to do that.
Yes.
I mean, are you able to sort of flip this now and turn it into a sort of positive engagement?
Indeed. I think one thing we were slower than we should have been at was forums. We talked about doing forums for a while. It's always been on the development stack. Never been one of those projects that we actually prioritised enough, and I think that was a mistake. Certainly we've had great customer feedback from forums. It helps site conversion. If people can find someone that's posted a forum that sounds like themselves with a similar problem, and it's worked okay for him, and he's given it 5 stars, and so is she, fantastic. They feel the confidence to actually purchase. I'm sure it works that people will read a forum posting to qualify a purchase and then maybe purchase somewhere else. So forums, we're very, very
You have a dedicated team working on the forums?
Yeah, we do. I mean, forums have to be looked at, they have to be responded to, they have to be moderated. Normally we find that if you have a forum that works very well, it almost self-moderates. You get people that give responsible postings. Therefore, if someone says something which is you wouldn't like them to say, they may get moderated by another forum poster. And always, the forums are going to be popular amongst people that don't like your terms and conditions, even though they may have accepted them.
Yeah.
But overall, it's a tremendous marketing vehicle for us, one that I wish we were more developed in, but we will get there quite quickly.
Mark, you're in a position where you have to be the objective person, right? And there's only so much budget, and you've got to accommodate your fees, obviously, somewhere in the budget.
That would be nice.
So, what's your take on the social thing? Is it worth people plowing much money into yet, or is it an experiment?
It's probably a bit of both. I think that it depends on the market and the brand and the industry sector that you're in. I mean, in technology, frankly, unless you're in it, you're missing a massive opportunity. In other sectors, it's not quite as relevant yet. I think one of the challenges we face with organisations is often there's this denial that I don't need to enter into it because people aren't talking. Well, people are online talking about it now. You have to, as an organisation, choose to take part, maybe even influence that debate and that discussion. Yeah. But if you don't think the discussions aren't happening.
Right.
And so there's that balance. So I think there's definitely plenty of experimentation that could and should be done. Doesn't need to be massive budgets. But I think, when you look at some of the organisations, I mean, Dell is a great example of an organisation that has embraced for many years now with the idea storm and that kind of stuff about embracing the power of social. There are real business benefit opportunities to that. Now, where do you draw the line between the latest fad and the late? So Twitter was a fad.
Yeah.
It's now turning into something a little bit more material, which is great. What's next? Well, I'll give you a big long list of sites to go and waste hours on if you like.
Right, yeah, which might become
some will turn into something and most will turn into nothing.
Yeah. Okay, now look, somebody offered me some question from the crowd here. The gentleman smiling at me there. Hang on, we've got a moving mic coming. Maybe you could just say who you are before.
Yes, of course. Hi, Justin Gould from Sky. Okay. I'm quite interested in the social media element and the attempt to interact with guests at high speed before they've left the hotel. I thought it was a very interesting approach, and I suppose I'd like to ask the panel how they would say that the pace at which they have to react has increased, or maybe that the customer is forcing them to work faster due to the internet. I'd be interested in
this kind of real-time stuff, right? Yeah.
I think certainly we have to change the pace that we react to the pace that the customer is expecting. And I often get asked at hotel conferences how we have created, for instance, the TripAdvisor culture that we have. And that has been our hardest thing, is in an organization where GMs and directors of sales and marketing don't necessarily understand or didn't understand the impact that TripAdvisor or Twitter might have on them. So for us, the biggest challenge was actually creating that culture internally. Now, if you walk into any of our hotels and ask the GM what their TripAdvisor ranking is and when the last review was and what the guest said, they will all know that. And so for us, we've had to change that culture. We've had to react to the speed that the guests are on. And also from a customer service standpoint, if we have a guest that's in-house and we can react with that guest and we can fix whatever, if there was something that was a problem, our ability to do that now versus if we go back 2 or 3 years when we would have gotten a letter in the mail possibly 3 or 4 weeks after that guest has stayed. We also find that guests who interact with us in a negative way on TripAdvisor or Twitter, once we do interact with that guest, that negative interaction very quickly becomes a positive interaction. And that guest then creates a relationship with the hotel and often creates better loyalty back with that hotel.
Right, so there's that apocryphal story about British Airways. They used to say how they'd lose people's baggage so they could find it again quickly. And get a warm glow from having done that. Simon, you're dynamic pricing. So are you? I imagine you're sitting at your desk tweaking prices up and down.
We are. We've now got a piece of software that helps us do that a lot better because we stock about 15,000 SKUs. 5,000 of them are A SKUs that we have to be in stock all of the time. A big chunk of those SKUs we price against a competitive set. So we might check the prices on one category on 100 different items amongst 30 different vendors 2 or 3 times a day. So it will be absolutely instant, and depending on what the pricing rules that we've actually set, the pricing will get readjusted on our site to reflect that. So the pace of change, the drumbeat change, is absolutely
You're
fierce.
using this principle for supply and demand. You're not doing it because there's a lot of chatter that the Dell X1 is a thing to have. So let's
No, I'm normally doing it because of making responding to competitor pricing moves. To make sure that we have the appropriate response to optimise our margins.
Your margins, yeah. Another question, lady here, if you wait for the microphone.
Just thinking about that though, is anyone
Sorry.
actually using analytics?
Sorry, could we wait for them? Say who you are and then.
Alison Whiteman, Virgin Atlantic.
Yeah.
Is anybody actually using analytics data to actually drive the pricing in terms of using it to assess demand?
Yes, I mean we're just coming to terms with what deploying this software means. So our knowledge base is getting bigger and bigger, therefore our accuracy is getting bigger and bigger. The best thing to do is to make sure that you can say, okay, what would happen if I did this in this type of category? So it does allow you to have to be more predictive, to try and run some different types of scenarios. Try and say, okay, these categories are growing big. We don't have a great level of share in it. What would it take for us to get a level of share in it? What would be necessary? What would need to be in place for this to happen? So as we get more skilled in terms of using it, I think we'll get much more positive in terms of using it as a planning tool rather than what we're doing now.
And I was thinking more in terms of customer online analytics. So if everybody's looking at a certain telephone type, does that make the price go up?
If everyone, no. If everyone's looking at it, it'll probably make the price go down. Will be how the software would work.
Because it's something where it's got a low demand, premium pricing,
Indeed.
right? Yeah. Interesting.
Indeed.
Mark, what are you seeing amongst your clients? Are people really embracing this, or are they still kind of?
Which question? Analytics or social media? Because I think there's a mixed answer between both.
Yeah.
In the I'm sure we've all been to lots of online conferences and heard about the connected consumer and all these kind of great things. But actually, one of the terrifying changes that it's bringing into organisations, or two, is the speed of change that's required. And it's great to hear the kind of the Starwood thing, and more and more of that. Accenture, by the way, are terrible at this. I think I am the person who monitors Twitter for Accenture at the moment because I spend my whole life trying to respond to people. We're not that bad, I promise. And it's a big challenge, that whole capability. How do you respond to Twitter and how do you respond to social media and still have to go through a legal review?
Yeah,
It just doesn't work. But what we're seeing in organisations as well is then how they're taking, or increasingly being able to take the analytics data. So analytics data has been around for years, but actually most organisations use it terribly. It's just, it's either, it falls into two camps. It's either a big pile of data that sits in the corner that nobody really knows how to use, or there's one or two specialists that run around with new graphs regularly. Look what I've made. Right. Without any kind of real drive back into business insight. And your challenge is a great one around the use of analytics, and we're seeing organisations really being able to turn analytics into insight, which enables you to make action. Now, again, back to my earlier big challenge. Our challenge in interacting with organisations in that space is how you continue to use fact to make the decisions around the action that you take. And how you test that action, rather than just because I've now seen it, I'm going to take a wild guess as to what to do. Lots of people are looking at it, put the price down. Might be an opportunity to put the price up. How do we know? And trying to work through that process. Yeah, I know exactly.
Like you see, what kind of person do you need in your organisation? What kind of people? I mean, are we looking for like maths grads? Are we looking?
It's definitely changing. There's a real mix. So yes, I think there's an increasing need for people who are good at maths, good at Excel. It's classic direct marketing people from one perspective. But they've always, you need commerciality. You need a degree of pragmatism in how you deliver stuff. I think one of the things that's really interesting is seeing the influence of, forgive me, young people in marketing departments increase. In that, it's quite often the 20-somethings that are out of university and tweeting. Given that, right, you're now our Twitter person, right? You're head Twitter, and trying to drive that piece, and how they have a significant influence on the organisation. It's kind of external perception and performance.
Interesting. Interesting. Another question for the audience. I want to get in as many as I can. Lady down here.
Hi, Jessica Butcher from Alibaba.com. Social media is the big sort of buzz thing at the moment, but obviously what the internet is best at, and particularly from the perspective of SMEs, is performance-based marketing around, obviously, PPC. We're here with Google, affiliate marketing, SEO, and things that are very quantifiable, obviously, using analytics. I was just wondering whether this is now sort of old school marketing, almost in an online context, whether you as large brands had any more recent learnings or sort of tidbits to give to other businesses, particularly businesses that can't rely on the strength of their brand necessarily, but need to use these performance-based tactics to get penetration and get out there.
Can I add to that? You know, have you squeezed all the juice out of the traditional stuff, the SEO? You know,
I think from if I can answer that from a Dell perspective, I think absolutely not. I mean, you've got to remember that the amount of time that we spend on that kind of traditional stuff, the old school marketing, is probably still 90–95% of our time right. That's where we put, you know, we have teams of people engaged completely on trying to squeeze the extra mile out of search, how to manage our relationships with our affiliates better, and so on. I think where we're innovating a little bit in those areas is trying to look at the new technologies that are available, like tagging and behavioral targeting, and we're looking at things like, excuse the expression, fractional attribution. These new terms are probably sourced within Google somewhere.
We'll forgive you the term if you tell us what it means.
Basically being able to allocate where really is the influence of that sale made in the path or the journey of a customer up to the point of sale. They look at an affiliate site, they go and do a search on Google for ratings and reviews, they then go somewhere else, and they go on 3-minute manufacturer sites, and then they come back and make a decision. Our decision engine today about who we reward for that payment in the natural kind of scheme of things within our online marketing is last click. It's like, who sent us to that client? That world is going to change within the next year, and it has to. And we have to look at the way that a customer behaves and the journey they take, and we have to build those relationships with those people who are engaged in that appropriately. And I think that comes back to lifetime value, which is, again, how we manage our relationships with our partners, but also customers, as to what they're buying, where and when in their life cycle. And that kind of tool is going to be key for that.
That sounds like that might be a good tip for Alibaba, that. Two more, maybe?
I think it's interesting, Angus, that you reference old school marketing as pay-per-click and SEO. For us, to me, it's an interesting question because there's a blur between social networking and, in this case, if you talk about PPC and SEO. In our case, TripAdvisor is actually buying our brand terms from a PPC standpoint. So someone who's looking for our hotel, if we're not active there, then TripAdvisor and others will be active there. If customers post videos on YouTube or reviews on TripAdvisor, those will also pull through on the SEO front. So for us, the blur between social networking and search is very important, which therefore means, yes, we have to be very active on the search side. For us, we're also looking at how do we take it to the next level. So for instance, if we look even on the PPC side, it's not enough that we're buying the right terms at the right time. But we want to understand who is that customer. What's different about a US customer from a customer in London? What are they looking for? What's different about them clicking a paid ad than if they're interacting with us somewhere else? And what types of offers are we serving up for them? So we're making sure that if somebody in New York, let's say, is searching for the Sheraton Park Lane in London, that what they're getting served up to them is an ad and an offer that is also specific to them based on that type of targeting.
Can we drill down a little bit? And how do you make that happen? You know, I mean, do you have to have a big bank of analysts, or how do you operationalize this?
I think the short answer is common sense. If you're a customer in New York coming into London, chances are you're arriving earlier in the morning with the way flights arrive in London. Chances are you don't need parking at the hotel. Chances are you're staying longer than a guest who's, let's say, coming in from the UK. So here we are at a Google event, and we'll take a look at somebody who's coming to us or finding us on Google. If they are based in the US versus based in London, the attributes that they're looking for are very different from one another. And our ability to then serve up a custom offer to them, but also actually tell them, because you are in the US, because you are searching for us on Google, here is an offer that is not available to you anywhere else. And we've seen that we can go from a 4 to a 5% or 4 to a 6% conversion just by really speaking to those people as individuals and giving them that level of customized offers. Right. But of course, those people are in big groups, so we don't have hundreds of different offers out there for a hotel in the space. We may have 4 or 5 different groups that we're targeting for a specific hotel.
So this is kind of a similar point, understanding who the customer is, understanding where they are in the buying cycle and where they've really come from. Same kind of lessons, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, if I was Alibaba, I mean, affiliate marketing 5 years ago used to be a fantastic way of building incremental sales, and we could do it at a much lower cost of acquisition than we could versus conventional channels. Those times have gone, but the great thing about affiliate marketing is you only pay on success. So you define what you can afford to pay in terms of cost of sale and strike the bargain with the affiliates there. So there is no risk, right. Which obviously there's an element of risk in terms of anything else that you do. If you look at what we'll spend on PPC, I mean, the key thing is, okay, it's all based on cost of sale. Well, that cost of sale only achieves that amount if we can get that level of conversion.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of us are running sites now where, okay, if you can keep the traffic up, some of us are managing to do that. The damn thing is there's a lot more window shoppers than active converters now. And, you know, how can we get our conversion rates to be best in class,
a bit more accurate,
so that we can achieve that cost of sale, so we can afford the PPC?
Maybe we could just leap off quickly into another topic here, which is, you know, I mean, I hear people talk about CPA coming back, you know, because if you haven't got a budget, it never left for some people. You know, what about the offline as well? Because I think, was it this last year we saw some kind of rebalance between offline ad spend and online. I mean, are you feeling this as well, that, you know, apart from the internet, you're having to spend more money in the papers or the billboarding? Or
we're spending less money offline and certainly putting more of that money online.
So you're still going more online?
We are going more online. One of the things we are doing, though, is attributing offline sales back to the online interaction. And we recognize that if 25 or 30% of our business comes to us through the web, of the 70% that doesn't, the vast majority of that has been influenced by
someone's done their research and then picked up the phone.
Exactly. And so we want to know what interaction, the offline revenue that we're getting has come from the online work that we've done.
Right, so you're trying to untangle that. Angus, I mean, I keep getting lots of email ads from Dell, and I see them in the Evening Standard regularly.
Yes. Offline's a critical part of our portfolio, and we've spent, well, I've only been with Dell for 2 years, but we spend a lot of our waking time trying to figure out that relationship between the offline and the online. We know it's there, we know it's key. We know that offline drives online, but we also know that, you know, offline drives a very successful call queue business as well into the call centers, where we get great upsell with a personal relationship with the customer. So there's some interesting dynamics there about how we balance that spend between the two areas, and that's a constant struggle for us, frankly, to make sure we've got the absolute optimum spend split between offline and offline. There is no right answer, because it depends on what else you're doing at the time. What are you trying to achieve? What offers you've got? Where are you trying to push the market into which particular categories? There's a whole bunch of different influencing factors in there.
Yeah. Mark, I mean, did you find clients who sort of say, I want to optimize the whole thing, online and offline, that's the starting point? Or,
no, absolutely. I think there's still that. I mean, it's been around for years. I remember, you know, as a client running TV ads and kind of, oh, this will never impact the website very much. Well, it did. It broke the website. You know, so you know, there's definitely a relationship there, and there's quite a significant one in that whilst everybody gets excited, you know, about Twitter and all, it's still pretty small scale. Yeah. You know, they are disproportionately influential, but it's still pretty small scale in terms of where the volumes of sales and conversions that it can drive. You know, and the way I kind of, when we talk to clients about you know, conversion and some of the challenges in that space, I don't think it's PPC and all that great stuff is old hat yet, because do we really think 4%, 5% conversion is as good as we can do? You know, if we got our best salesperson in the offline world to sit in a room with 100 people that have expressed some kind of interest in your brand, do you really think they'd only convert 4 to a sale? You know, most of us would hope they'd do twice that, 3 times that. I don't know, but that's the scale of opportunity. Until we're at that level, you know, part of the reason they can do that is they can have a relevant, you know, personal interaction, conversation with that client, rather than being put into 3 groups of 33 around the room. Right. And so there's a whole level of sophistication yet that can be achieved that is becoming increasingly possible from a technical perspective. It's been sold for years that you can do this, but the reality is, you know, it's pretty difficult. You know, the technology over the last couple of years has really accelerated to make some of that a reality. There's still some challenges around how the business people, the marketing people, go about using that technology. But that's part of how then we're looking to try and help optimise that whole experience.
Just a little side question: does Accenture make online sales? Does it ever get somebody kind of emailing saying, pitch me or whatever? I don't know.
Yes, surprisingly quite a lot, and it comes from two directions. It's either a genuine, I'm the marketing guy, director of such and such. Please, can you come and talk to me? They don't come. But actually, what happens is quite a lot of the time is when the CEO goes, right, we need a new big outsourcing, scary, horrible thing. Who should we send the RFP to? It will go to some fairly junior person who'll go and Google who does back-end integration outsourcing.
Oh, okay.
Right? Can't do it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That big list of they'll start picking from that list. And if we're not on that list, we know of specific examples where we've not been asked to respond.
So there's your case to get Accenture spend behind your personal name and get you out there. Okay. Another question from the audience. A whole load of questions. The left-hand side seems to be doing really well. The right-hand side.
Hi, I'm Teja Patel from 3. We talked quite a lot about Twitter earlier, and I kind of wonder, is that a distraction for a lot of companies really, and they're not really focusing on the basics? Angus, earlier on you said, get your basics right first. Who do you think, in your opinions, which companies out there are getting the basics right in this environment?
So I would actually disagree on the basics are coming to us from people on Twitter and social networks. The feedback that we're getting from customers are about the basics in a hotel. It's about the cleanliness of a hotel, the quality of the food in a restaurant, the check-in experience that they've had. Fortunately, I'm making it sound like Starwood and the comments, whether it's on Twitter or TripAdvisor, are often negative, which fortunately we get much more positive comments than we do negative comments. But for us, those comments are about the basics at the end of the day, and that's our opportunity to actually hear what the customers are saying and understand what's happening at the front desk in our hotels. And so in a strange way, it's actually brought us closer to the business.
So maybe it depends on what you're selling. You're selling some experiential thing. These guys are selling hardware. Maybe the trend is the other way. I mean, who do you admire? Who's I mean, you can elect yourselves, but who comes after?
Of course.
Who's getting the basics right? Who's just, apart from the speaker we heard earlier.
It's very difficult to pick any individuals. I mean, if you look in Dell space particularly, there are some online players across Europe that are doing extremely well because they've just got a great experience. They've got the fundamentals of the e-com experience right end to end.
Pixmania?
Pixmania is a great example. It's the one that was at front of mind. There's a couple of others across Europe that are doing very well as well. And I think the idea is that they are just seeing themselves as just great, catalog kind of orientated e-commerce engines with great value stories behind them. And there's some really nice sort of user experience elements that wrap around the core basic. A little bit like the Amazon model. I really didn't want to bring up Amazon, but hey, everyone does. Yeah. But that's what they do. They've got the basic engine right, and they think very carefully about those wrappers around the core capability, and they think that through very carefully. Right. So I think fundamentally it is those businesses though who understand their revenue unit margin kind of principles. What is the business about? And then are able to probably look at what's the USP that we're bringing to the marketplace and leverage that and shout about that very hard.
Right. So what do you say to the troops? Who are you trying to catch this week?
Well, depends on which market I'm in, but I think at Dabs, I think we know what our operating model is. We know what our strategy is, so we focus on what we need to do to be successful. One of the issues for my industry is that unless you are the biggest in terms of selling hardware online, or you are so different, there is no middle ground at all. So for us, I think the basic business model is always under a challenge. One of the things for us is to make sure that we sell more subscription services on top of the hardware. We're doing that very well on our business-to-business side, where we have large SME customers. We're selling them an awful amount of kit. Okay, why don't we sell them an industrial-strength broadband pipe? Once we've sold them in the industrial-strength broadband pipe, we'll sell services to run on that particular network. So for us, it's shifting the business model from basically shifting tin, and we are a bloody good tin shifter, to selling network to services that run on that particular
interesting
network.
Emerging strategy. I mean, Mark, you see everything, right? You see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So who's in the good category?
It's interesting actually, just when you look across different sectors. So I know we've got a very e-commerce focused kind of audience today, but different sectors do different things really well. So if you take automotive, now there aren't too many of us that go and look to automotive at the moment, examples of best practice business running, but actually some of what they do online, in the way they deliver product information, the way they drive interaction, the way they try and manage that journey from online to offline, there are some of the guys that are doing some really interesting stuff and breaking some new ground. You know, clearly when you come and talk to the retailers, you guys are good at e-commerce. You know, my challenge would be, how good are you at that information piece, or how good and clear are you at being consumer-centric in your navigation journeys? How many of you organise your navigation by the product that you sell? Is that the way consumers really think about you as an organisation? So we see across different sectors some areas where there are some opportunities to kind of share and learn. So new ground being broken in different areas.
Interesting you mentioned automotive, because they really need it now, right?
Yeah.
I think we can squeeze maybe one or maybe two questions in. Now we need someone from this side because, left brain, right brain.
Hi, Helen Evans from Lloyd's. I'm just curious, obviously there's quite a lot of investment that you guys are doing into social media. In terms of the analysis of return on investment, is it simply in sales that you're looking at that, or are there any soft metrics that you're kind of looking to define how well you're doing?
This is ROI on social media, is that?
Yeah, so I mean from a Dell perspective, I think I'll just to reveal a little bit of insight into Dell. We're very, very good at social media in terms of our base, but we actually don't ROI it. Okay, so I think there's a business culture that we've ingrained, comes right from the top, which says we're going to do this stuff. And actually, as a consequence, there's been teams of people that have been set up. We have bodies, lots of bodies, developing capability, and that's the kind of capabilities we're developing and rolling globally. Where that's a disadvantage is when we're trying to do a campaign like T-Mobile or any of the examples you saw this morning, where you do a big brand campaign and then an intrinsic part of that has to be the social media stuff. Because the first thing that the marketeers ask is, where's your ROI on the YouTube video posting or the viral video that you're going to try and create? And of course we can't provide that. There's no way in the way we manage things that we can actually create a very strong ROI. So I know that there's lots of models that are developing, econometrics models and other models that are developing around how these different points of contact with customers with these messages is influencing the big sale. But we're a long way from that. And frankly, for us, that's been a good thing, because actually we probably wouldn't have got to where we've got to unless we'd had that freedom and that carte blanche from Michael Dell to go and set up and run and just grab hold of the philosophy of social media within the company.
All right, so you're still at the phase where, we don't put too much pressure on them, just let them play and see what happens.
Absolutely, but it's changing, right? Because we're now into hard transactional world. It's very, it's getting embedded into the business, and the right questions are now being asked around, okay, so we need the modeling, we need the measuring capability, we need to be able to track and so on. So we're in that turning point, but we went through this earlier phase, which a lot of other companies might not have the joy to go
Daniel, if I'm right, you guys already see social media as essential. Are you measuring ROI on this, on the time you spend answering TripAdvisor? And
I think the ROI is certainly different. So rather than return on investment, it could be return on innovation. I think there's two things that we're focused on. One is ROI and the other is social media. And the two of them you can't always compare. There are hotel companies that are out there who have launched big Twitter campaigns where they've sent special offers out to their followers on Twitters, and they're able to show an ROI based on that transaction with those customers. For us, it's actually more important to know what is our ranking on TripAdvisor, as an example, or if there's a video on YouTube of one of our renovated rooms, how many people have actually watched that video. And I think we're actually still at the point, and hopefully we'll be there for quite some time, that we are as motivated by that ranking on TripAdvisor because we know the impact that has on our business.
Yeah.
Do we know it in ROI terms the same way we know the ROI on pay-per-click? Absolutely not. Is it as important to our business? Definitely.
Definitely. Let's try and get one more question from this side. Gentleman over here, evening it up a bit.
Hi there, Matt from Virgin Media. First of all, thank you for introducing me to fractional attribution.
Right.
I'll be taking that back to the office to make myself a little bit clever today. Just on that, I guess in my industry, one of the challenges that we face is the increasing opinion from consumers that there's a deal to be had over the phone. And I just wanted to know what the panel's view was in terms of the role of online and how you try and address that. Because obviously, from my point of view, it's all about channel shift, trying to get customers to buy more online. But understanding the role of online in that whole purchase decision, and the fact that if I go to the phone, potentially I might get a better deal because I might moan a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll start with you on this one, Mark. I mean, where does that fit into the...
It's definitely a real facet of human behaviour. I'm doing exactly the same with O2, trying to get my iPhone upgraded. So,
that's a horrible tweet for O2.
Yeah, there's lots floating around at the moment. Yeah. It's kind of, it's where it brings back the challenge of this multi-channel approach and multi-channel integration, and really being able to understand the consumer. And there's some organisations that try and effectively try and control the consumer channel. I would challenge some of that thinking in that consumers are going to come through whichever channel suits their needs the best. And the challenge actually for organisations is to be able to integrate those channels effectively so that the experience is comparable. Now, if you have a policy that says you can get a deal if they moan, well, unfortunately, all the internet and the social stuff is going to do is make that worse. Because somebody will tweet, couldn't get it through the online site, but when I phoned up John in customer service, he gave me 10% off. Right, so there's that consistency where all the things kind of come together across social media, across the analytics, across the multi-channel approach. That's just making it harder. It isn't going to make it easier, I'm afraid.
Right. So it makes your job more complicated. You must be saying this.
I'm with Mark really there.
Yeah.
I think that's you need to have a clear channel strategy.
Yeah.
Understand the multi-channel strategy. You've got to have the right channel effectiveness, so understand where customers want to shop both now and in the future. Make sure you're in those channels, and when you're in those channels, make sure you're efficient operating in those channels. So I agree with the consultant.
I think I'm free.
It's available.
No, always a good thing to do. No chance for that.
I think from a Dell perspective, I think the one thing that we're finding right now is that the offline. So within Europe, just very quickly, we've got about 70% ePen, right, for our online-offline business, and we're growing this thing called retail as well. But just within the direct business, that varies by country, 50-50 in the UK, slightly much higher in other countries. But the principle is that with offline, is that yes, when we make more money from offline, because when someone phones up, we've got a much better ability, a personal relationship, we can upsell, cross-sell, which is what we're all trying to do, right, away from the basic system. But what we're trying to evolve the culture of the business in, and we're very aligned across the two channels on this, is that the offline needs to become an extension of the online experience, because the value of the brand is actually the online personalization and configurator kind of experience for Dell. So we've got to work very closely with offline to make it more of an extension rather than a separate channel. And that's where we're driving all the activity that we're doing within the capability like chat, interactive chat, click-to-talk, a whole bunch of other kind of like enablers within the call centers which enable an online sale, and we're driving much more development in that area for that very same goal, which is to drive it as just an extension of the online experience. And that's where we're culturally trying to take it, which I think is a little bit different.
Daniel, I mean, your business, yours being heavily service-orientated, face-to-face, traditionally. Is that informing what you're doing in the online-offline balance?
I actually think it's quite an interesting question, because in our industry, people typically go online for discounts thinking you're going to get a better offer online than you will by calling the call center. I think here we are about talking about offers, and there's sort of an undercurrent about driving rates down in this economy. One of the things we've been very focused on online is how do we actually sell the user experience or the guest experience that they could have in our hotels. So if you're going to Paris and staying in one of our hotels in Paris, how can we upgrade you to a room overlooking the Eiffel Tower? And would you actually spend more money for that room overlooking the Eiffel Tower? And we've invested a lot in different experiential websites and interactions that we can have with the customer online that we could never have offline, to actually show the guests those experiences they can have. One quick example is a website we've launched called roomwithaview.com, which actually has webcams around the world at a number of our hotels. It's the largest high-quality network of webcams in the world. But the reason why we have it is to bring people into our environment who are interested, in this case, in the view, and who are prepared to pay a premium for it. And so we're really excited about using the online channels in really creative and interactive ways to be able to upsell the customer into an increased experience.
Price cut. Fantastic. I mean, that's a great note, I think, to end on, which is thinking about being in a hotel looking over the Eiffel Tower. can we say thank you for the insights from our panel?